So today we've got the Calypso on the lift and we need to do some maintenance. This thing needs a set of spark plugs in it, and I also just want to look everything over while I got it on the rack. But since we have it here, you guys haven't seen underneath this car in a while, so I figured we would go ahead, take a quick look, and I'd remind everybody of what this car actually has done to it. So in the back, it is a stock housing 8.8, but as you can see, we welded it up. Team Z uppers and Team Z lowers. It's got the BMR torque box reinforcement kit, strange shocks with coilover kit, which I'm not necessarily a fan of. I don't like how it rides. The repositioning kit here also for the car where you can move them up and down. Believe it or not, I think this car has a 340 pump in it with -6 line feed and return. Now this is why the car sounds so unique. For whatever reason, these mufflers don't have a lot of sound to them, meaning that this car really doesn't have a tone to it as much as it just has a very deep bassy note. So this causes all kinds of problems on the video for whatever reason. So we've got a set of old Flowmasters over there. I may end up taking these off and putting the Flowmasters on. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that'll definitely give us a little bit more sound if we do that. It's got a Stifler's cross member with a TKX transmission from Silver Sport in this thing. As you can see, the twisted wedge 11R heads, dart block, 347 stroker, 70mm turbo. It's got a tubular K member. This really opens up the car, and this is something that I recommend for anybody that's considering it. A tubular K member is awesome. Look at the room you have. I mean, you can just see daylight under there. That's crazy. But for right now, let's go ahead and get these spark plugs out. This is that turbo life that nobody ever talks about. The maintenance part is kind of a pain in the ass. I always had to put a zip tie up right here, because when you take this off, the exhaust wants to fall, and you have to get the downpipe off this thing before you can ever change everything out. I would say these plugs have seen better days. Wow. Get it up here in the light so you guys can see. Check that out. It's definitely time for a plug change. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull all these out, and I'll show you how I got my plugs. We'll pop them back in, and hopefully this thing will bust right off and not have any more problems. All right, so I got all the old plugs out, and as you can tell, they all look pretty bad. Some of these I had replaced a couple of weeks ago. I replaced like 3 of them just to get it started. So you can't look at plugs like this, and these are recent plugs that I put in. They were used, I just cleaned them up. Anyway, that's beside the point. We knew those things were fouled out anyway. All right, so on to how I got my plugs. Everybody's got their own way of doing it, but I figured I'd give you guys the way that I do it. Now on this car, it's only running about 10 pounds, maybe at the most 15 pounds. There's really no point in gapping these plugs down at 19 or 20, something like that. So about 25 is what I'm going to go with. That leaves you a nice big gap there to burn fuel at idle. So here's how I gap them. I just take a feeler gauge like this. As you can see, this is 25 thousandths. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can go ahead and put it inside of the spark plug in between the electrode, and then you can tap it. And what this does is this piece here, your feeler gauge, won't allow this to collapse any more than this. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can go ahead and tap it down too far. As you can see, that is entirely too far. And then all you got to do is just kind of wedge your gauge in there and give it a little tug until this just barely goes in and out. And there you go. So a couple different ways of doing it. You can also use the traditional, you know, keychain style thing where you slide it around. I prefer this because it's more precise, but whatever. Right, let's see if this thing will fire up. We got everything back in place. I wish you guys could hear this car. It actually sounds really good. The cam hits pretty hard for what it is. If you'll listen though, let's see. don't know if you guys can hear that, but it rattles everything in the shop. So whatever. All right, let's go for a quick drive and make sure this thing's good. I'm gonna let it warm up and we'll go ahead and move the Retro Fox and take this thing for a drive. Who knows, we may have found a little bit of power. Those plugs look pretty bad, so we'll see. Retro Fox has been getting a lot of love lately because I've been having to drive it, because Miss Brutal has been driving my truck. That was a random high idle. I'm not driven my truck in like 3 days. It feels so weird to get in this thing and drive it. There we go, it just popped. Now this car is so freaking easy to drive. I wish that I could explain it to you better, but it's just a really, really easy car to like get moving. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel tight. You don't have to rev it to the moon to get it to go. All right, let me go ahead and switch camera angles for you. Down on top of the transmission that's rattling around. It's either that or that metal cage. I gotta figure that out. That's driving me nuts. Okay, we are good on coolant temp. Up top, which is, you know, not a bad thing, but probably do some adjustment on that. Take out a jet in the rear. Definitely set too low. It's set at 6,500 and it'll get that really quick. So I need to move it back up to 7 and leave it there. That'll help. Car definitely runs a lot smoother. So much smoother now with the new plugs in it. Hell yeah. I like it. Shit out of it. I feel confident that I could drive this car pretty much anywhere. All right, let's go ahead and close this video out. We're back from our drive, and I want to give you guys my final thoughts on the whole blow-through setup. Like, what am I thinking about this? Is this something that I'll drive a lot? Is this something that just makes more power? Is it just easier? So I'm gonna answer a couple of those questions before we wrap this up. Am I gonna drive this car more? Absolutely I am. I plan on driving this thing a lot more than what I have in the past because I feel like I can rely on it more. Injector issues and things like that can arise, and it's out of your control when things like that happen. Now granted, most everything we drive these days is fuel injected, but with this car I just felt like something was off, something was amiss, and it could have been a couple of clogged injectors or Who knows, guys? I really don't know. I can tell you that the car puts me at ease a little more now driving it with the carburetor. As far as it being faster, it's hard to say. I would think it probably would be faster than what it was. Typically that's just a carburetor thing. Up to, I think, a certain amount of boost, carburetors tend to make more power per pound of boost than EFI. Typically, there's always an exception to the rule, but part of it is the fact that the carburetor is going to cool the charge with basically a rainfall of gas coming down, right? It's like a big radiator, and it cools the air as it comes through to the point to where it's sometimes in the 50s on top of the carburetor around that area. So yeah, I think the car probably makes a little more power. It's kind of hard to tell though, if I'm being honest with you. So I still think this is a really good idea for somebody who doesn't want to deal with EFI. You can still leave your factory computer in your car, and you can actually pull your little chip out, your PIP sensor, what do we used to call it, the little spout connector. You can pull the spout connector out and basically set your timing at 34, 32, 36 degrees, whatever your car likes, and lock it out right there. You don't want to advance anymore. You can leave the stock distributor in your car, and you can run a carburetor. You can do this very, very budget friendly. I know I've had people in the past say that you can't. You absolutely can. Some rubber line, I promise you, there's nothing wrong with rubber line. It's not going to last as long, but you're only running about 5 or 6 pounds through it typically, maybe about 10 pounds total, I guess, up to the regulator. But anyway, with all that being said, guys, I think this is a really good option for people. You're going to have to get out there with a screwdriver though, and you're going to have to tune on the car some. We got 1% left on this thing, so I'm going to go ahead, take you around the car real quick, and I'm going to wrap this video up. So the Calypso's coming along nice, guys. I do want to show you real quick, like we've done some interior cleaning and work. So now everything is put back together, and the Calypso is finally looking like a car again on the interior. I absolutely love it. I made this little bracket here out of a GoPro mount and just basically epoxied it on. And in my opinion, under the hood looks a lot better as well. It's just cleaner, and I like it. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. And as always, thanks for watching.